Hi, everybody. Hope you're doing marvelously well. It's Warren Hewitt here with the wonderful Chris Lipe. How are you, my friend?
I am great. Thanks for having me on again.
We are going to do the top 5 recording tips for vocals. So this is quite fun indeed. If you know Chris, which I'm sure many of you do because his channel is absolutely amazing, he's not only an incredible singer, he's also a great vocal coach, of course, and we have done a course together, which there will be a link down below. We decided a couple of days ago that we would have a conversation from 2 different perspectives. Mine as a producer and engineer, and of course Chris's as a vocalist, as somebody who teaches singers as well as recording his own vocals. So it's kind of a nice crossover where we find the points where we agree, and we have 5 which we think are absolutely most important imperative tips that we could think of when you're recording vocals. So in reverse order, number 5, what do we have, Chris?
Perfect is the enemy of good. And there's 2 components to this, right? There's the before you're recording aspect of things where we kind of psych ourselves up and we look at all the little details of what we need to do when that red light's on. And then when we actually go to record, we're more concerned about getting things right. We're more concerned about those little details than we are about the overall expressiveness and being in the moment with the song. And so our quest for perfection actually creates an enemy, it creates a monster that attacks the ability to be truly good, right? And then there's the other side of this, where when we're listening back to the performances that we've done, we tend to judge ourselves in that perfection. Again, instead of looking at, what's the emotional value of what I just did? And I guarantee you, if you talk to any of the singers that, we loved growing up, they were in the moment when the producer said, "Oh, that's it. They were not thinking about, did I hit that note directly on pitch? Or did I pronounce that vowel exactly right? Or, oh, I messed up the words." There are lots of times where on albums, you're listening and you're like, did they mean to say those words? They kind of mixed around a sentence or whatever, but the performance was so good. I guarantee you they're in the control room going, "Oh, that's it. Doesn't matter. Just let's go." So perfect is the enemy of good.
I love that because I remember buying a Police album as a little kid and reading the lyrics and thinking to myself, well, Sting's missing out words. He might, instead of like of the or at the, he'll miss out the at or the or the of, just because it sings better. But the point is,
Right.
When you're listening to it, you just hear it and you know what they're trying to say. It doesn't always have to be absolutely perfect. The message comes across regardless. And it was great because I remember thinking as a little kid, it was genius. Even then I could notice, I was like, well, you've got 2 elements. You've got I can experience the song, and then if I want, I can read the lyrics, which are all beautifully written, phonetically perfect and everything.
Right.
Great point. I love that one.
Yeah.
Let me take this one.
Do it.
You don't have to get the take. I can't tell you how many times I've worked with singers where they just think about it as a complete take. And if you're working with a good producer and engineer, if you're working with somebody who's talented, they should have a lyric sheet out there and they should be taking notes. That's our job. Take notes. David Foster very famously said to me, he's never done more than 10 takes with any singer. It's because he's really talented and he marks down when he's got something. And if he doesn't have something, he goes back to the area and focuses on it, but he doesn't exhaust the singer. Now, the 2 perspectives are, from the producer perspective, is like, I don't need 95 identical takes to comp from.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been in that situation as an engineer with a rookie producer who's just going, do it again, do it again, do it again. And then I've also experienced it from a perspective of the singer who really feels like they have to give the take, but they keep fluffing these 1 or 2 lines, which is where we should be concentrating on.
Yeah, and from the vocalist perspective, and a lot of us vocalists these days especially are self-producing, right? We're the only people there.
Sure.
And in some regards, this can feel a little bit less pressury, right? Because you're not trying to impress this live person in a room or in another room. But in another regard, it's very hard to know when to say when because you don't have that other listening ear. I always encourage my self-producing vocalists to think big picture, but work in chunks, because you know that you know how your voice feels, or at least you should become more and more intimately aware of how your voice feels, when it's going to peak, what you're capable of, what your energy level is like, what your psyche and your expressive abilities are like. You don't want to burn yourself out by trying to do complete take after complete take, or even little section after little section. This is not a vocalist, but his guitar certainly sounds like a vocal sometimes. I was reading an article on how Steve Vai composed his solos for Passion and Warfare. And this was, of course, recorded on tape before we were able to do real, minute punches and all that stuff easily. This author was describing, along with Steve, how when he was going through, he would essentially chunk record or step record so that he could get down what he wanted to get down and really focus on them, like, how do I want to bend that note? How do I want to approach that? And then listen back to it. And of course, there'd be punch, 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 punch. But then he'd listen back to it and go, yeah, I've made these decisions. Now I don't have to think so much about making decisions because I've chosen, based on listening, critically listening back to my vocals, what sounds really good. And now I can go back and be in the moment and execute based on decisions I've already made. And this is the value of chunk recording. This is the value of not going into the studio and saying, I have to nail this. I have to nail it, 15 times so that the producer or whoever, we can choose the best of everything. No, make your decisions, listen to your body, listen to your mind and your energy level, and don't be afraid to chunk things together, because you're going to be able to realize the very best that you have inside of you as a vocalist.
This actually is a massive discussion which could go off. We could actually make a 25-minute video just on this.
Sure.
Because there's ways of approaching this. I will always do a single vocal take. Just be ready to go.
Scratch.
Mic's up,
Yeah.
do a take. And with my lyric sheet in front of me, which I highly recommend as a producer and engineer, you have the lyric sheet, I'll go down and I'll highlight some stuff. But also what happens when I get a full take to start off with is that I get into the song. The singer gets into the song. I start to be aware, maybe also from an engineering perspective, of when they're maybe going to be screaming into a note and it's going to be over compressed and all this kind of stuff, So I'll start getting into that stuff. But the great thing in the wonderful world of digital about having one or two full takes is if I do decide to concentrate on areas, I can always take phrases and the way that phrases glue together from those original takes. So what I mean by that is if you're going ba-do-da-do-da-do-da-da, and then you punch da-da-do-da-do-da-da, that little tie line can be stolen from the first take and dragged down into the chunk.
Totally.
And it keeps the flow going.
Right.
So there's ways around of just focusing in on things. I think ultimately, I agree with the David Foster thing. If you know what you're doing as a producer, 10 takes is more than enough.
Oh, sure.
And you should be focusing in on sections. I've been in a room as an engineer with rookie producers, as I said earlier, and watched them do take after take after take. And then this is what they do. Hey, Warren, would you comp that?
Right.
And also, I think on this perspective, comp the take straight away afterwards while you're still in the zone, and you'll be able to do it a lot quicker.
Yeah.
All right, what's coming up next? Number 3.
Smile.
Yeah, I like this one.
Get your face out of the way. You've probably heard from your mom or your grandma, when you're taking pictures, or even when you're speaking to a large crowd. They always tell you to smile, to lift your face. Why is that such a big deal in the studio? It's because you are getting your face out of the way. Your voice tends to, especially if we're nervous, when we get into the studio and we start approaching the mic and we are focused on, intonation and all of these things, we end up, in some cases, kind of drawing our face downward. And you can hear even when I'm talking, if I'm just doing this and I've got, I'm not opening my mouth a ton, and you can understand me just fine. But as soon as I do this, as soon as I do that, You actually self EQ. You provide this presence that a lot of producers want out of a vocal, right? They don't want to reach over to the EQ plugin and boost 4.5K. They would rather that you have a nice presence and an engaging sheen to your voice. And nothing does that better than smiling. The other thing it does, believe it or not, it helps you focus on the amount of power and expressiveness you need to put into the take, as opposed to just focusing on accuracy. So this feeds back into our the first one that we shared.
Absolutely, yes.
And what I want to do is I want to demonstrate something real quick. I'm going to go to the mic and I'm going to record the same passage with my mouth sort of closed. And then I'm going to sing the same passage with my face out of the way. That's going to be the only difference. And you're going to hear a massive, massive difference. Now, let's listen with my face out of the way. Same phrasing. I'm staying far away. I'm staying far away.
So basically, you lost the marbles out of your mouth.
Yes.
There you go.
Right. Yeah. But the thing is my overall tone actually fit better, right? Yeah. I still had, there was still that richness, there was that engagement with the microphone, and there was this sense that my voice was coming out instead of being trapped in. And, I didn't really change consciously a whole lot of anything else except I lifted my face. And that engaged other things sort of unconsciously that let me get into the track even more. Even with that simple example.
Number 2 in reverse order.
Okay. Get comfortable. Stay loose. This might sound really generic, but it feeds back into some of the other ones we were talking about. If you have ever done a piano recital as a kid, or you've seen a piano recital for kids, they're practicing their stuff at home, and then they come in to the actual recital, and they're stiff, and then they get up. And then they play. They just bomb it. I mean, it's too robotic. They make mistakes. Before you even lay down your first scratch take, I have something that you should try. Put on, maybe it's one of your songs, maybe it's a goofy backing track, something, and let yourself muse. I call this incidental warming up. This is a way to get yourself in the mindset so that when you go to record your takes, you can take an element of comfort and spontaneity into things. So I have another little demonstration. I'm going to throw on a backing track that's just kind of this neat 4 on the floor groove. I'm just going to muse over it. I'm not going to worry about saying particular things. I'm going to just kind of riff and make some noises and get to the point to where I'm extremely carefree with the environment. The other thing that I'm going to keep in mind, and this is something, Warren, that you can speak into a ton, is making sure that my environment, that the signal chain, that everything is reacting in a way that I can feel comfortable. My voice isn't too loud with regards to the music, et cetera, et cetera. Let me make some strange noises, and then we'll have a discussion about how to make things more comfortable on a studio level. Try it out, a phrase here and there. Nothing's planned. Experiment with your range. Whoa, let your voice crack. It's warming up, warming up. Ooh. Ooh. Yeah. Ooh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh. Have a conversation with your microphone.
I was working with a singer from Glee. They had the vocal coach come down and they took them past their voice. So they lost all the warmth, like almost immediately.
Uh-huh.
And when I came to do verses with the singer, I had no body left in it. I find like when I'm working with singers, I want them to do different things at different times in the day. I don't like singing in the morning, but if they are, and it's the only time they can, when I work with Chris Allen, of course, from American Idol, he was doing a full album in like 2 weeks. So he was like driving from different producers and doing different stuff. And the 2 songs I did with him, we got like allotted like 11 to 1 to do the vocals. And so he would come in the morning, maybe he'd been up for about 3 hours, but still he hadn't quite warmed up for the high stuff.
Right.
And I remember specifically saying to him, what's your highest note without straining? And he went, ah, or whatever it was. And we made him sort of warm up backwards.
Uh-huh, exactly.
So I was like, oh, and he kept going down.
So
we didn't have him push past and he didn't blow out his voice. And it's quite interesting. I think that as a psychology, honestly, as a producer, I'm saying this to you with all earnestness. As a producer, understand singers. Because if you understand vocals and vocalists, you will get much better results than just the average rock producer, which I know very well, that just does a bunch of takes and then figures it out later. There is some validity in just running it when a vocalist is like, I really want to sing, I really want to sing. Of course, put up the mic and start recording because they're enthusiastic, they're in it. And if they want to do what they want to do and run 10 takes, great. You should always let them do what they want to do in that respect if they're excited about it.
Sure.
But you also have to understand when the law of diminishing returns. If you're in a place where you're not getting good vocals, then just be polite and be like, I love what you're doing. You know, let's pick it up again tomorrow.
Yeah.
You know, understanding vocals and vocalists is really important. Which leads us to the last point. Number 1, distraction. I absolutely love distraction. I'm going to speak from the producer's perspective, and then I'm going to throw it back to Chris for his perspective. Everything we're talking about here, I think, can be sort of surmised in one thing, is that we love the idea of the singer being in the song, of course. We love the idea of being in touch with the emotions of what they were trying to say. We love them, you know, understanding the tempo and the timing and the key center and the arrangement, all the wonderful things and how to express themselves. But sometimes that is the worst thing you can do is reinforce that. Because if they're in there, like as Chris was explaining earlier, like I'm in the studio for the first time and there's this guy over the other side there pressing record, giving me direction. I'm so nervous. And they're so into every detail and they're analyzing every single moment. Sometimes the best thing you can do, to be honest, almost always the best thing you can do from a producer's perspective is distract them. Relax them. Bring some humor into the session.
Yep.
Get their favorite cup of tea, a glass of water, I don't know, some flowers, whatever it might be. Phil Ramone talks about this. He talks about this at length, and he worked with the greats, with the Nat King Coles, with the Frank Sinatras, with the Barbra Streisands. Maybe they're not our genre of rock, but they are singers, incredible singers. And he worked with them, and he talks at length in his book about making the singer feel comfortable so they can just do it. So distraction for me is a very, very big tool. I can see singers come in and I can see them be like, hi, Warren, I'm really excited to sing. And they're like visibly shaking. So what do? I talk about everything except for being in that song because they're already obsessed. So I'm trying to bring some of that obsession, bring it back. From your perspective, how does that sound to you? What are the sort of things that you deal with?
I agree 100% with everything you're saying. The more comfortable and this feeds back into the last one, right, that we talked about, our last point, the more comfortable you can make the environment, the better the performance is going to go. And distraction is a fantastic way to do that. But what if you are your own producer? How do you introduce this kind of thing into your session that you are doing by yourself when you don't have, is your distraction social media? No, because that takes you away from the mic. How can you sort of distract yourself or trick yourself into performing well and not get in this mindset that we've been discussing here, which is, I've got to perform, performance anxiety, which is relevant when you're by yourself as well. Here's what I do. And rather than talk about it, I'm going to just demonstrate it. The first little musing that I did where we were talking about getting your face out of the way, I'm going to sing that line an octave higher, which is where it was designed to be sung. And this is challenging, especially for in the morning. It's a challenging thing for my voice, and I know that it's challenging. And it's very easy for me to get in a funk where it's like, oh, I'm trying. I can't get this. I can't do it. I can't. Then I won't be able to because I'm trying too hard. I need something to take my mind off of trying to get it right and free myself up. And that's why we saved this distraction thing for the very last one, because it ties into all the other things we're doing. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go, and the first few times I do this little section, I'm going to just throw caution to the wind. Anything goes. Noise, no pitch, whines. It's going to sound like animals are dying. And then I'm going to work from there, and I'm going to start honing instead of what usually happens, trying the first time to be really, really on. Oh, that's not working. And then you try again for it to be on. You try, and you it's a self-defeating thing. You never get it. But watch what happens. Because I'm not terribly, as you could tell from earlier, I'm not terribly warmed up. Here we go. I'm staying far away. I'm staying far away. That's why I'm feeling alone. Take two. Staying far away. Staying far away. I'm staying far away. Okay, getting there. Staying far away. Staying far away. That's why I'm feeling alone. Allowing yourself to be incidental and in the moment is a lot easier when you've let yourself fail publicly and intentionally as you discover and learn about what your voice is capable of right now.
Wow, thank you ever so much, Chris. This has been really, really fantastic. I am sure our good friend Chris here, throwing him under the bus, will answer some comments and questions below.
Absolutely.
I feel like we've covered a lot of ground here, and I'm sure there's some minutiae and some details that people still need some clarity on. So please leave a bunch of comments and questions below. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. We'll see you soon.
See you soon. Thank you. You rock. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing and singing and all that great stuff.